Welcome everybody back to another edition of Hunkajunk Car Mods Garage. This is another addition to the Pro Street Mustang, the 97. We've been doing body work and everything like that on it. Got a little bit of a dent there. We had some door dings in the body here. Other than that, everything's pretty good. We took and we got our hull straight, got all our holes filled and everything like that. And we put a high build primer on it. This is a sealer primer to protect your metal from water. It's waterproof and everything like that. We put that on it and sealed it up. We've sanded it down to get it smooth. We're about ready to put another type of primer on it to do our blocking. There's a lot of videos out there for doing body work, guys that are much better than I am. So we didn't go through the detail of showing you how to do body work and everything like that. It's, you know, basically for you guys, it's better for you to go to somebody that is a professional to learn. I've been doing body work for a long time. I got a nephew that runs a body shop. I've helped him off and on quite a bit. He's helped me get this car to where it is right now. Today, like I said, we're going to be putting a primer on there that is a black primer. That way we're going to wet sand it, black it out, and get it ready for our paint job. It was red. We are not going with the same color. For one, really expensive. It's a 4-stage paint. I just didn't want to deal with all the wet sanding and everything like that on it, so we're going to go with a black. So when you go with a different color than what your car is, you have to do everything. You have to sand down 180 is a sandpaper we used. Sand down the whole car, pretty much get the clear pretty much gone on it. Inside and out, door jambs, trunk lid, hood, all that good stuff. And primer the outside. You necessarily don't have to primer your door jambs. You can if you want. But what we've done is basically did the outside and the trunk and everything, and the door jambs we left alone. We did all our skirts, you know, our bumpers, stuff like that. We wound up getting racing seats and everything for the car now. We've got quite a few new things. New sheets in the car. Doing body work. Okay, this is a high build primer. Its number is UP2253. It is a 4-to-1 applicant, so you got a, I don't know if you can see that or not, you got a hardener and stuff that you put in it. This here is the standard hardener. It's a UP22 or UP2323. That there, hope you can see that. And then what you got here is you got your reducer. That is a 1370 reducer that you add with that to mix it in. It is a chore with it. It is a really thick primer. You have to be careful with it. It sticks really good. If you get runs, it ain't no big deal, but you don't want big runs. You can sand them right off and still have the primer on there. When you're doing it, stay away from your edges when you're sanding it down, a dry sand. If you're going to do another blocking primer on it, like we're going to do, take and kind of stay away from your body lines and stuff like that, your edges, so that you don't wear them open. You can also take this and just go ahead and wet sand it, and of course, do not open up any metal or anything like that. Otherwise, you're going to have to spray it on again, wet sand the whole car down, and go, straight to painting. We want to put another primer on to block it out with. All right, what we've used here is a high-tech acrylic primer. I don't know if you can see that or not. It's kind of got some primer on it. This is mixed with a paint thinner. Right there, MS251. The number on this is 77400. We took and used that for our blocking primer. The reason is, I'm going to show you here. With the blocking primer, you put it on. When you're wet sanding, you're not getting into your main primer. What we have here, you can see here's a spot right here I'm going to show you, for example. This white looking stuff here, that is our sealer primer. The gray is our blocking primer. You look real close, there was some runs right here. I did this on purpose so I could show you. They're slightly in there now after we wet sanded. We still got to wet sand a little more to get them completely out. And then we'll prime over it again and then wet sand it. What we do, if you look here, we took black paint and we stood back and we misted it on there. The reason we do this is because no matter how good you are, you don't see every little spot, and when you're painting black, you have to get every little dimple, every little scratch, everything. And when you wet sand across this, let's say there's a dimple, right here, you're going to wet sand that, and that black is going to stay there and show you where that dimple is at. That way you can come in, if it's real lightly, and prime over it again and try to fill it with primer. We're at the stage right now where you don't want to take and put fillers and stuff in it unless you absolutely have to. When you're priming with the latex primer that takes paint thinner, you're getting a cover base, but yet it allows you to be able to sand, like I showed you there, down to the sealer primer, the protection primer, we'll call it, on the paint, or on the car for the paint, to keep it sealed to protect the metal. And you wind up seeing with the black every little spot you can take care of, and you just go back over it a little bit with the primer, and you can wet sand it down where you found your little mistakes. You filled it in, the little dimples or even a scratch, to make it smooth. The wet sanding, when you're wet sanding, makes it as smooth as possible, like glass. So when you lay your paint on, that becomes smooth as glass. You see no scratches, no dimples, no nothing like that. Your black paint will show everything, and you want to make sure that's all gone. The latex primer, the blocking primer, is what I called it, which that's what we do. We call it blocking primer because you're blocking it out. What we use, we have a little rubber pad here with a smooth edge on it, and we take that across the car. You want everything to run one way. You don't want to do circles. You don't want to do up and downs. You want everything to go from front to back. When you get into your little detail spots, we have a foam rubber pad. I'm going to squeeze it out here. It holds the water in it, so you can squeeze it as you're going to get water. You're constantly always putting water on when you're wet sanding. This little rubber pad, foam pad I should say, you can get into your little spots where you can't normally get with the block. This here is, you can mold it to the body parts and everything like that. Of course, do it real lightly. You take a squeegee. This is our little rubber squeegee. You can get it at any body shop. You squeegee it off. It will show you your depth or whether there's a dimple there with the black. And then you go, okay, this is your big decision. Okay, I can sand that out, or I can prime it again and try to fill it, and then squeegee it off again. Wet sand and everything, squeegee it off, and it'll show you your little flaws. This is, a 3M little rubber squeegee pad. It can be used for multiple things. It can be used for tinning. It can be used for taking the water off because you get a powder that build up, and you can't really see your body. So you take that and you, like I said before, okay, there's a dimple. I fill it in with a little bit of primer, wet sand it, squeegee it up again, boom, it's gone. So that helps you with a black car get it to perfection. The other part of it is we've wet sanded it. It's all done. It's all smooth. We've got all our flaws out of it. Now we're going to take the car out. We're going to give it a bath. Again, we have our sealer primer, which protects the car from any water getting to the metal, which is important. We can wash it down make it all nice and clean before we paint it, and it will not hurt the metal. Earlier in the video I said if you take and, just want to use the sealer primer and wet sand it down, you can. What happens is if you do that, you get it thin, and it could possibly allow, if you've got little bitty rust spot, or not rust spots, but little bitty metal spots showing, and you wash it, you're going to create a rust. It's going to start wanting to rust. So that's why we use a blocking primer. It allows you to do whatever you need to do and still protect the car. So we're at the point now where we're just about ready to paint. We're going to take this car out. We're going to wash it. We're going to come back in. We're going to, while we're washing it, we're going to clean the garage out. We're going to spray it out. We're going to take the hose and we're going to rinse it out so that there's no dust around. We're going to blow it out. We're going to do all that stuff to make sure that when we lay paint, there's going to be no dust. There's going to be no bugs. A lot of that really cannot be helped, but we're going to try everything in our power to take and make sure that there's nothing that's going to get into this paint. So when we lay it, it's going to lay smooth. It's going to be no flaws. When you paint, if you happen to get a flaw in it, you can wet sand it down, wet sand it out, clean it up again in that spot, and spray over the top of it again with black. You always want to leave a little bit of every type of primer you use, every type of paint. You want to leave a little bit left in the can, or have a little extra in case of any incidents. That way you can always go back. It's like earlier, we put the sealer primer on and the gun started spitting at the end because it was out of primer, and it left a little bitty run spot in it. So we sanded that out. We got it smooth again. We took the blocking primer, sprayed over that spot a little bit, sanded it down a little to match the other, and it became smooth again. With the blocking primer, like I showed you, I made a little run in there and I sanded that out. I left a little extra primer over so I can go and redo that spot and wet sand it to get it so that there's nothing there. What happens is if you don't see the run, or you don't get it all the way smooth, you put your primer on there. Let's say we're going with sealer primer, the sealer primer run, and then you put the blocking primer on there. Well, what that does is that run builds up and builds up and builds up. Now, let's say you've not even seen it with your paint. So what you're going to have, your paint might not run, but it's going to show a run. And if you're going to try to take that off, you're going to have to go clear down to the sealer primer, or if it's in the blocking primer, you're going to have to go clear down to that. You don't want to do that. You want to go over this car over and over and over and over and over again. Double check it. Make sure you've got everything. Make sure you don't have any little pits, anything like that. To make your paint job as best as you can. All wet sanded and ready to paint. It's a little tight in the garage here, so everything's a little close. The pin's just sitting on there. We'll paint that separately. All through it. It's got to be washed before we paint her. But there she is,